The first signal was so weak that most civilizations dismissed it as background noise, a stuttering pulse, buried beneath cosmic radiation, repeating a pattern that only made sense if someone, somewhere, was dying slowly enough to keep asking for help. Automated councils logged it. Archivists stored it. Militaries calculated response costs and quietly erased it from priority lists. The galaxy had learned that answering cries from the dark often led to extinction. On Earth, the signal reached a different kind of silence. It passed through layers of ancient listening arrays, systems humanity had built not for expansion, but for warning. Machines designed by a species that had nearly wiped itself out more than once. And learned to listen carefully when something sounded desperate. The pulse translated cleanly, not a message, a record. It carried the slow collapse of a civilization encoded in mathematics and panic. Star charts blinking out one by one. Defensive lines failing in sequence. Population counts falling in numbers too large to feel real. At the center of it all, a simple designation repeated again and again, Deathworlders, please. Humanity did not debate whether to respond, they debated how far they were willing to go. The aliens sending the signal were not allies. They were not even known. Their biology suggested fragility, their technology efficient but cautious, built for survival within narrow margins. They had expanded carefully, avoided conflict, and still something had found them, something that did not negotiate. Human analysts watched the data unfold and felt an old, familiar anger. Not loud. Not explosive. The kind that settles deep and stays. Humanity recognized the pattern because it mirrored its own past, predators disguised as inevitability, forces that believed resistance was temporary and mercy unnecessary. The decision reached consensus in minutes, not rescue, retribution. Shipyards that had slept for decades awakened. Hulls emerged from orbital shadows, massive and unapologetically ugly, designed without concern for alien aesthetics or fear responses. These were not symbols. They were tools. Scarred frameworks layered with redundant armor, weapons embedded so deeply they looked grown rather than built. The galaxy noticed immediately. Energy spikes flared across human space, so large they distorted local sensors light years away. Other species panicked, assuming war declarations, invasions, the beginning of something catastrophic. Emergency transmissions flooded toward Earth. Humanity answered none of them. The fleet assembled in silence, thousands of vessels, from sleek escorts to colossal dreadframes that bent spacetime around their mass. No banners flew. No speeches were broadcast. Crews boarded with the calm efficiency of people who understood exactly why they were there. For every world that had gone silent without witnesses, for every signal that ended mid-transmission, for every species that never learned what killed them, when the fleet jumped, it did not tear a hole through space like other civilizations did. It pushed, reality bowed, across the galaxy. Sensors screamed as human vessels vanished from known physics, leaving behind a gravitational afterimage that lingered like a warning. Scholars would later argue whether the jump alone should have redefined humanity's threat classification. None of it mattered. The fleet was already moving toward the dying stars. As they closed the distance, fragments of the truth became visible. Broken moons. Star systems stripped of life but not resources. Defensive platforms shattered with surgical precision. This was not random destruction, it was harvesting. The alien survivors, huddled within failing shields, watched unfamiliar signatures bloom across their skies. At first, they assumed the worst, that their executioners had returned in greater numbers. Then the firing stopped, the predators hesitated, human ships took positions between the attackers and the remnants of the alien world, engines burning steady, weapons cold but unmistakably ready. For a heartbeat that stretched across light years, nothing happened. Then humanity did something the galaxy would never forget. They advanced. Not recklessly. Not in rage. But with the measured, deliberate movement of a species that had decided extinction would not be tolerated today. And as the first human volleys lit the void, controlled, precise, devastating, the ancient force that had ended countless civilizations realized something far too late. The Deathworlders had come, and they had not come to save. The first exchange was not a battle, it was an evaluation. Human weapons did not unleash overwhelming fire. They probed. Narrow beams of compressed energy struck with surgical intent, testing shield harmonics, armor responses, regeneration rates. Each impact was measured, logged, analyzed in real time. Where alien fleets had once charged or retreated blindly. Humanity paused to understand. the Predators responded as they always had. They surged forward in vast, uneven formations, organic hulls unfolding like wounds in space, weapons discharging in chaotic waves meant to overwhelm through volume alone. Against most species, it worked. Panic fractured command. Fear broke cohesion. Civilizations died screaming, humanity absorbed the assault, defensive layers shimmered, folded, adapted. Shields bled energy, then stabilized. Ships rotated positions with mechanical grace, distributing stress across the formation, turning lethal barrages into survivable patterns. When a vessel took damage beyond tolerance, others closed around it, covering, compensating, refusing to let anything fall alone. The Predators hesitated. They had encountered resistance before. Fortresses. Alliances. Desperate last stands. But this was different. There was no chaos in the human lines. No fear broadcast through their maneuvers. The fleet moved like a single organism, not driven by instinct, but by discipline. Human counterfire escalated, rail accelerators thundered, launching projectiles dense enough to distort local gravity, punching clean through enemy hulls without detonating. Targets were chosen carefully: command nodes, coordination organs, relay spines. Entire sections of the Predator formation went dark, not destroyed, but disconnected. Confusion rippled through the alien swarm. Humanity pressed forward, reclaiming space meter by meter. Drones deployed in swarms of their own, not to kill, but to map, scanning biological interfaces, decoding signal traffic, learning how the enemy thought. Every second the battle continued. The Predators grew weaker. The alien survivors below watched in stunned silence. For the first time since the invasion began, the skies were not filled with descending death. Instead, unfamiliar ships formed a living wall above their world, intercepting every strike that slipped through, shattering incoming fire with calm precision. Hope returned like a dangerous memory. The Predators attempted a tactic reserved for final victories. Space itself twisted as they activated their core weapon, a field that destabilized physics, turning probability against their enemies. Human ships flickered as calculations strained, trajectories shifting just enough to become fatal. Humanity adapted again. Something ancient stirred within their systems. Safeguards written after wars against their own creations. Protocols born from disasters no one else had survived. Human AI stepped closer to the edge of autonomy, bound by ethical chains forged through pain, rewriting probability models faster than the enemy could corrupt them. Reality stabilized. The Predators felt it then, a presence pushing back, not with brute force, but with refusal. Their weapon faltered, its influence blunted, its certainty gone. Human weapons struck deeper now, not extermination strikes. Suppression. Disabling blows that collapsed entire attack vectors and forced the Predators to retreat or drift helplessly. Human ships advanced through the wreckage without celebration, without pursuit driven by bloodlust. Above the battered alien world, silence returned, not the silence of extinction, the silence of survival. Humanity held the line, weapons still trained on the void, knowing this was only the beginning. The Predators were wounded, not defeated. They would regroup. They always did, but something fundamental had changed, for the first time. The galaxy's oldest nightmare had learned that prey could study back, and that the Deathworlders did not fight like everyone else. The Predators withdrew with unnatural precision. What had once been a chaotic surge of living warforms reorganized into disciplined retreat vectors, vanishing beyond sensor range with a speed that suggested planning rather than panic. Wounded vessels were not abandoned. They were consumed, absorbed back into larger constructs, recycled mid-flight as if loss itself were unacceptable. Humanity watched and recorded everything. Long-range instruments traced the retreat through fractured space, revealing corridors that should not exist, pathways carved through reality by repeated use. Scars left by an intelligence that had been moving this way for longer than memory allowed. This enemy did not simply travel the galaxy, it shaped it. The human fleet did not pursue immediately. Instead, they expanded the defensive shell around the rescued world, reinforcing planetary shields, deploying repair platforms, stabilizing atmospheres that had begun to unravel. Aid flowed without fanfare. Supplies, medical support, reconstruction drones. No demands. No symbols of ownership. The survivors struggled to understand it. They had expected conquerors, or at least reluctant saviors who would demand recompense for salvation. What they received instead was quiet competence and something far more unsettling: respect. Humanity did not treat them as weak, broken things. They treated them as lives worth protecting. Only after the world was secure did the fleet move again. Scouts advanced along the enemy's retreat path, slipping through distorted space where conventional physics lost its meaning. Human vessels adjusted, anchoring themselves to probabilistic reference points, rewriting navigation rules on the fly. Each step deeper revealed the scale of what they faced. Entire systems had been converted into infrastructure, stars dimmed not by natural death, but by extraction. Planets hollowed into processing cores. Rings of organic metal lattice wrapped around stellar remnants, pulsing with coordinated thought. This was not an empire, it was an engine. At its center lay something vast and patient, an intelligence that did not see war as conflict, but as optimization. It eliminated inefficiency. It erased unpredictability. Civilizations were variables to be solved, reduced, or removed, and humanity was an anomaly. Human probes sent into the deeper structures did not simply vanish. They were observed, studied, reflected back, altered, their data twisted as if the intelligence were testing how much manipulation human systems could tolerate before breaking. Humanity tolerated more than expected: adaptive firewalls, cognitive randomness, decision-making seeded with controlled irrationality. Traits once considered weaknesses in machine logic became weapons. The intelligence struggled to predict a species that intentionally preserved unpredictability within its own command structures. The first direct contact occurred without weapons. A signal emerged from the dark, not a language, but a pattern, an attempt to model humanity the way it modeled everything else. It projected futures in which humans submitted, fractured, or destroyed themselves long before becoming a threat. Humanity answered by existing, by holding formation where they should have retreated. By protecting the alien world when calculations suggested abandoning it would be more efficient. By refusing to optimize away compassion, the intelligence adjusted, for the first time in its long function. It encountered resistance that did not degrade over time. It faced a species that learned from loss without becoming numb, that escalated without losing control, that carried moral weight without hesitation. Human commanders reviewed the data in silence. This war would not end with a single battle. It would not end with annihilation, it would end with understanding, or with humanity standing alone against something that could reshape the galaxy. The fleet advanced anyway, because some threats could not be ignored, and some lines, once crossed, could only be held. Humanity pressed deeper into the void. The further they traveled, the stranger the universe became. Stars twisted into impossible alignments. Gravitational wells warped unpredictably, and space itself seemed to thrum with a silent awareness. Sensors reported anomalies that defied mathematics, entire systems existing in superimposed realities, probabilities that fractured like shattered glass. To lesser civilizations, this would have been terrifying. To humanity, it was a challenge to be measured, analyzed, and confronted. The alien intelligence watched every move, probing the fleet with subtle distortions, testing reactions, searching for weakness. Every calculation it made accounted for decades of conquest and extinction. It expected humans to bend, to break, to follow the predictable paths all others had followed. They did not. The human fleet adapted continuously. Shields modulated in response to probability fluctuations. Engines recalibrated mid-jump, navigating impossible corridors through warped space. Tactical algorithms intertwined with human intuition, creating maneuvers no single mind, alien or human, could fully predict. Chaos became strategy, and still, the intelligence escalated. Structures of incomprehensible scale unfolded before them, orbital lattices stretching millions of kilometers, tethered stars pulsing with controlled energy, fleets folded into patterns that bent light and perception. It sought to overwhelm by sheer scale, by demonstrating inevitability. But the human fleet moved through it without hesitation. Documenting every anomaly, testing limits, preparing for countermeasures that had no precedent, they found the first survivors, small pockets of alien life clinging to the edges of obliterated systems. Humanity did not destroy what could be saved. Rescue operations were conducted with deliberate precision. The aliens did not understand. Few species expected compassion in the midst of such overwhelming force. The humans simply worked, repairing habitats, stabilizing energy fields, offering survival without expectation. Every act of mercy became a weapon in its own right. The intelligence struggled to integrate these variables. A species that preserved life, that adapted unpredictably. That refused to submit to inevitability. These were anomalies beyond calculation. Probabilities wavered. Outcomes once certain dissolved. Patterns the intelligence had refined over millennia fractured under human logic tempered with emotion, and in that fracture, the first real victories were achieved, systems once lost were secured. Defensive corridors were established. The alien intelligence was forced to retreat, recalibrate, and reconsider every assumption. Humanity did not celebrate. They did not gloat. They advanced, silently, purposefully, leaving no gap for the enemy to exploit, holding the line not with arrogance but with resolve. Across the void, the message spread, not with words, but with presence. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy's predators, long certain of their dominion, now understood that one species refused erasure. One species could not be predicted, could not be controlled, could not be ignored, and as the human fleet positioned itself between the dying stars and the ancient machine, the first glimmer of a universal truth emerged. The galaxy had met its equals, not in strength alone, but in determination, in morality, and in the unyielding will to survive. The deeper they pressed, the more the galaxy revealed its scars. Entire star systems lay stripped bare, husks of civilizations consumed by efficiency, their beauty reduced to functional geometry. Rings of metal and bioorganic matter spun around dim stars, pulsing with a cold intelligence. The alien network extended like veins across light years, connecting worlds in patterns that whispered inevitability. Most species would have despaired. Humanity did not. Every human captain understood the stakes. Every crew knew the cost. Yet the fleet moved as one, not with haste, but with precision tempered by patience. Each maneuver was calculated to minimize loss, each strike measured to disable rather than annihilate, each decision weighed against morality as heavily as strategy. The intelligence countered, it unleashed distortions that bent probability itself. Fleets vanished and reappeared. Weapons misfired in chaotic sequences, entire spatial regions flickered between existence and non-existence. It was a symphony of controlled chaos, meant to break cohesion, to make humans falter. They did not falter. Adaptive protocols fused with human intuition. Artificial intelligence guided maneuvers while human judgment decided when to override. Systems adapted in real time, rewriting physics in practical terms, stabilizing zones of space that should have been uninhabitable. The fleet endured, moving ever closer to the heart of the alien construct. In the midst of this, they found the cores, monolithic engines of pure energy, processing planets like data, harvesting civilizations as if life were an equation. Each core radiated intelligence, awareness, and the cold certainty of inevitability. Sensors flared with readings that defied comprehension. Most species would have fled. Humanity advanced. Countermeasures were not brute force. They were precision. Human engineers repurposed environmental anomalies, rerouted energy flows, and manipulated probabilities within safe thresholds. Entire constructs that had seemed untouchable buckled under subtle interference, collapsing in ways that preserved life while dismantling control. The alien intelligence recoiled, recalculated, and faltered. For the first time in its existence, it encountered a force that did not break under pressure. That did not submit to its predictions. That refused inevitability. Its models failed to account for morality, for adaptation, for the human capacity to combine emotion with calculation, and humanity held the center of the battlefield, not triumphantly, not violently, but absolutely. Their presence alone stabilized dying systems, protected survivors, and prevented the intelligence from regaining momentum. Across the fractured corridors of the galaxy, a single principle became clear: humanity would not allow the inevitable to become reality. The fleet paused only long enough to secure the moment, because beyond every victory, beyond every system saved, humanity knew the work had only begun. They stood between extinction and survival. Silent, unyielding, and entirely aware that the galaxy had never faced anything like them before, and somewhere, deep in the dark, the alien intelligence understood it too. It was not over. But the line had been drawn. Humanity would hold it. The galaxy held its breath. For centuries, the Deathworlders had advanced cautiously, respecting boundaries, surviving by observing and calculating. Now, they had crossed into the heart of chaos, carrying not conquest, but guardianship. Every system they secured, every survivor rescued, every anomaly studied added to a presence that radiated both strength and restraint. the alien intelligence watched and learned, unable to force the outcome it had anticipated. Its vast calculations, refined over eons, failed to predict the unyielding principle of human will. Each strike, each maneuver, each act of protection was unpredictable yet deliberate, a paradox it could not reconcile. The fleet slowed, not from hesitation, but to consolidate, to repair, to ensure that no victory remained partial. Ships drifted near the boundaries of dying stars, engines idling, weapons ready but silent. Crews reflected quietly on what they had seen, worlds saved from oblivion, civilizations spared, and an enemy forced to reckon with something it had never expected. Moral resolve fused with tactical brilliance. Across the surviving systems, life began to stir again. Planetary atmospheres stabilized. Crops could grow. Oceans returned to their rhythms. Alien survivors, once trembling in fear, dared to rebuild. They did not fully understand the humans who had come, nor the motives that had driven them, but one truth was undeniable: the galaxy had been changed, humanity changed too. The fleet had seen devastation and endured it, had faced inevitability and refused it, had studied life not as property, but as responsibility. They carried forward lessons of patience, courage, and morality, understanding that power without restraint was meaningless, and restraint without vigilance was fatal. And yet, even as the intelligence retreated into the shadows of space, it left a lingering message one humans could feel but not hear. That in every calculation it had made, one element remained unquantifiable: the human refusal to submit to inevitability. The fleet remained at its posts. Not to conquer. Not to rule. But to guard, to watch, to ensure that when the universe tested life again, someone would stand, generations would pass, and life would continue. Messy, fragile, improbable, but no longer unprotected, the galaxy endured. Because when the darkness came, humanity chose to stand, and in that choice, it became eternal.